Welcome to another episode of Entrepreneurs in Fuego. We're documenting the journey of incredible entrepreneurs, like my new best friend, Charlie Wolfsandle. How
are
doing,
you?
man? I'm doing just fine. You have been in the real estate market for a very good number of years.
Actually, no. So here's, actually, I'll give you my quick background.
Please.
So actually, I was in the military.
Yep.
So I went to the Air Force Academy.
All right.
I was in the Air Force. I flew fighters, F-16s for
No way!
11 years. And then I was in project management for about 8 years in Houston in the oil and gas industry.
Okay.
Now, years ago, while I was going through F-16 training here in Arizona, I got my license years ago. Yeah, Luke Air Force Base.
Okay.
So I got my license back in 2005.
My dad graduated from there.
Oh, did he?
From Luke Air Force,
That's
yeah.
great.
Way back in the day, about 60 years ago. Anyway, go ahead.
So 2005, I got my license here in Arizona.
Right.
Real estate's something I've always kind of wanted to do, and I've wanted to be in it. So while I was still active duty, I got my license. Now, obviously, you know about the market in 2005 was going up. I was still active duty, so my plan was when I get out of the military, I'll come out here.
Perfect plan.
By then, real estate was down again, and it was challenging, as you know. I was in project management in oil and gas, and I've kind of always had that desire, and I've done other businesses on the side while I was doing these other, working in corporate America. But I decided that at some point I wanted to do this myself, right? I had a business where I sold drones before most people knew what drones were.
No way.
I've sold drones to Disney. I've sold drones to the Marine Corps. So I was doing that before. I had to build them before I shipped them to them. Nowadays, you can go into Best Buy and you can just pick them up.
Or order them online, I guess.
Exactly.
Right.
So that was kind of the first forays into it. I got my MBA at University of Texas, which kind of really solidified my decision that, I think a lot of people have this thought that running a business is hard, right? You have to be some super genius. You have to know things that others don't. You need to be a financial wizard.
Yep.
My philosophy is this, and success is simple, just not easy, right?
Sure.
You have to be willing to work for it. It's not hard, and there's plenty of roadmaps, right? Success leaves clues. If you start to study people that are successful, you can find the way to get there. So when oil and gas was starting to go down, I had this in the back of my head that I wanted to come back to Phoenix. I wanted to be in real estate. And so we made the leap, my wife and 4 kids. We moved back here. My wife is originally from Scottsdale area, so
Right.
It was the logical choice. And I think having come from the military background, there's a certain level of confidence you need to have in yourself to be willing to take a risk, which
Dude,
a lot of people don't.
You're flying F-16s.
Right.
So when you're talking about level of confidence,
Right.
You're flying a $300 million plane.
Right.
You have to have. I mean, our government has a little bit of confidence in
A little
you
bit.
first to fly.
Now, I don't know if my wife would fly a private plane with me, but
But all right, so let's kind of equate that a little
Yeah.
bit, right? Because to fly a machine like that, you have to be incredibly prepared. You have to have contingency plans. You have to have a contingency to the contingency. And it's pretty much, and then you're there by yourself, right?
Yeah.
And you have to be incredibly alert. The same thing with entrepreneurship, right?
Yeah, so, and it's funny because there's a couple, part of the reason that I chose to kind of start my business with Keller Williams is they are the most entrepreneurial minded real estate brokerage that I've ever seen.
Huh.
They've actually been ranked as the top training company across all industries, right? So that's pretty impressive. So if you think about the Air Force, right? I went to the Air Force, they train you. That's what leads to success, practice. There's another good saying, it's, spontaneity is a conditioned reflex, meaning you're only successful with spontaneity if you have the training and the backup to go behind it, right? So with an F-16, you do years of training to fly the fighter. You do years of practice. For my 11 years, we're flying basically every day of the week, and it's practice, right? By the time you actually go fly overseas, you know what you're doing. Like you said, it becomes a reflex, but it's only because you've worked at it.
Right.
If you didn't put the planning and the work behind it, you can't be successful with spontaneity. The same thing with even real estate, right? With real estate and entrepreneurship in general,
Yep.
you need to have a level of focus so that you know the things that you need to train yourself to do in order to reach that level of success, right?
And that is cool because in entrepreneurship, how do you get that training if not by failing? You can't afford to fail with an F-16,
Right.
but in entrepreneurship, we are allowed to fail as many times as we can.
And it's beautiful. I mean, a quick story was we were talking about sewing things before we started. I was still in the Air Force at the time, and we had our first daughter, and we lived in a tiny town in New Mexico. And we were going to Walmart, and the baskets are really dirty. So I go to a fabric store. I'm like, I'm going to solve this. So I made a basket cover, right? And I sewed the whole thing myself. My wife kind of laughed at me while I did this. But everywhere we went with that thing, this is before they existed commercially, people said, where did you get that? You should sell that, right? So there's a lesson for me, right? I didn't act, right? So I made it for myself. Most successful businesses come out of a problem that a person has and they're trying to solve.
Right.
Well, if you're having that problem, there's a high likelihood that others are having it as well, right? And so these, as you accumulate these lessons, but like I said, success leaves evidence or trails behind. If you were to do the study of other successful people, they're just people like you and I, right? They've gone through things. We always compare ourselves to their end result. We don't see the kind of path that they took to get there. And I think what we really need to do is focus on the path they took, the failures they've had. You know, if you look at some top successful entrepreneurs, they've failed miserably tons of times before they hit the one that propelled them. And now we look at them and we say, wow, they're just super lucky. Well, no, they worked really hard and to get to that point.
We're looking at the end result,
Exactly.
not the journey
Exactly.
itself, which was fraught with ups, with downs,
Exactly.
with off ramps, with on ramps, with all sorts
Right.
of things. It's not just a linear thing. It was
Right.
just all sorts of ways. And so, in this journey for
Right.
you, with all the experience going back to the military, what is the one thing that stands out for you? That you would impart to somebody else?
Yeah, I think it's funny that you said the one thing, right? So Gary Keller has a book called The One Thing.
Interesting.
And it's a great book because oftentimes, and I'm even finding it in real estate, it's easy to get overwhelmed with details.
Absolutely.
Right? But, most things are like dominoes. You have to find the one thing that's going to give you the most leverage and focus your efforts on that. If you can do that, that's going to knock down other things out of your way, right? And I think that the one thing you need to do is be able to focus and figure out the root of kind of the problem you're facing and focus on your plan, not the problem you're facing, right? What was my plan? Do I need to adjust it? But ultimately, maintain a focus on where you want to go and look for others that have done it, right? I'm not the first real estate agent. What I am first at is I'm going to treat this like a business. The statistics are that most real estate agents are actually a second career.
It's a part-time.
Well, I fall into that as well. But I've, over moving in the military over 8-10 years of moving, we've bought and sold personally about 10 homes. So I've had good agents, I've had poor agents. The good ones treat it like a business, right? Applying MBA knowledge and business knowledge and treating it like a real business, right? You have real customers, your products or your services.
Sure.
And being willing to take the service that I had in the military and apply that to customers. That's kind of really where I'm going with this is, as you know, setting yourself apart is what's going to actually make you successful, right?
What sets you apart?
I'd say the fact that, having that service mentality from the military, I'm willing to do what it takes. Another thing is just communication, right? Most realtors fail when the client doesn't know what they're doing. People think it's easy being a realtor. There are a lot of things to do, and the fact is that most realtors don't communicate what they're doing, right? So if I were to if you were to bring your car into service for me and I'd say it's $5,000, here's the keys back. Wouldn't you want to know what had happened, kind of the steps that I had worked on? It's the same thing in real estate. People want to understand the process and kind of, having that, education background, you want to train the customer to know what to expect from you.
Plus the fact that I don't know of many real estate agents that go, "Hi, my name is Charlie. I fly F-16s." Nobody does that.
Exactly.
I can tell you that probably for a fact. You're probably the only one.
Yeah.
Is there like a cool, really F-16 story?
Cool F-16 story. Well, there's a lot of them.
I mean, are you flying, in some mission that nobody knows about, and something happened, or?
Well, I mean, ultimately, the thing is that there's.
It's got to be thrilling, right?
Well, it is, and what's funny is, people say, "Wow, it must have been great to fly F-16s," and it is. However, as you know, the military finds ways of really containing that. The best days are when it was just you out there. I would come home and tell my wife, "Hey, I got to see the sun today on a cloudy day," So it's kind of, you get to see a lot of kind of a new perspective on things. And that kind of, even applies into business, right? Getting that 30,000 foot view, literally in a business can help you, because often you get mired in the weeds. But really, you need to be looking at the total picture to know which way you need to go. You're
like the coolest real estate agent I know, man. I tell you what, that's going to be the coolest thing in the world, just getting up there. And I remember my father when he was a pilot, and I would go with him, on his flights and so forth. And this is back in the day, and he was in the Ecuadorian Air Force.
Right.
So he would take us into the the cockpit and stuff, which I'm sure is not allowed anymore. I'm talking about way back in the day. It was the coolest thing in the world to this day. I remember.
It's great.
Being stuck in there and seeing the world from that point of view.
And as a side note, the other thing that I'm doing, I told you about drones, is I'm doing aerial photography with drones to support real estate, because nowadays you have to have an FAA license to do it commercially. Well, I've already had a license, so I actually got my my drone license on the first day you were allowed to in the U.S. So.
Boom. I told you were the coolest one.
Yeah.
With that, we're out.